What's up guys, Keenan from Keenan KTV here, and welcome back to another video. In this video, I want to take a closer look at the Khabib Nurmagomedov vs Tony Ferguson fight, but mainly focus on how Tony Ferguson would beat Khabib the Eagle Nurmagomedov. With that being said, let's jump right into the video. When it comes to Tony Ferguson going up against Khabib Nurmagomedov, it is a completely different fight. Khabib has never really faced anybody quite like Tony Ferguson, and Tony is very unique in his own right. The man has tremendous cardio, along with a great ability to recover very fast, has good height, has good reach on Khabib, and is definitely going to challenge Khabib all around, not only in the stand-up department, but also when it comes to the ground. Now, I'm not saying that he can go in there and stuff all of his takedowns and wrestle Khabib and beat him at his own game. No, Tony, when it comes to it, he is really the only guy that I have seen in the lightweight division that can pull off and fight quite well off of his back. He is the only guy that I can go ahead and say that has very good and effective Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. In a day and age where Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu has become the norm, we have really yet to see anybody, at least in these days, truly exceed at that art again. And when it comes to it, Tony can really pull off great finishes from the bottom. However, the fight does not start off on the floor, and when it comes to the striking game, I would have to give the advantage to Tony Ferguson. Tony is just all around a way better striker than Khabib. He has the height and he has the reach on him also. So when it comes to that, I do believe that he will be having a lot of success against Khabib. It has come to a point where Khabib's striking has come leaps and bounds to what it was at the beginning of his career. He went from being a all-around, I'm gonna jump in, I'm gonna burst with a random attack, to a well and thought out methodical approach to the striking department. However, I don't believe that that will be enough. Against Tony Ferguson, he is facing somebody that is indeed taller than him, indeed rangier than him, but also somebody who is well versatile. He has always fought people who were good at one specific thing. Barboza, for example, he was good at kicking. Conor McGregor, he was good with his hands. Rafael dos Anjos, he was good at coming forward and putting the pressure on you. But when it comes to Tony Ferguson, Tony is a well-rounded fighter. To his kicking game, to his elbows, to his boxing, to his all-around movement, he is a very well complete fighter. So in that regard, that is already a new dynamic that Khabib has never really faced, in my opinion. You see, Tony Ferguson, aside from having the height, reach, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, the things that we know that Tony Ferguson has is the fact that he went through adversity. Whether it be against Barboza, whether it be against Michael Johnson, whether it be against Anthony Pettis, the man has faced adversity and he has overcome it. When it comes to Khabib, Khabib has always been a very dominant fighter. He hasn't really had anybody that went in there and really tested the waters with him and that really took him to the deep ends of the fight game and really made him push through. It was always him that was always on the winning end, that was always dominating. You see, how would he do against somebody that would take him to the deep ends of the fight game? Of course, when it comes to this fight, I do believe that Khabib will take Tony Ferguson down, keep him down and work him up. But at the same time, I cannot really go in there and confidently say that Khabib would defeat him early on. And you see, that is a very key factor in this fight. From my observations, Khabib tends to slow it down in the 4th and 5th round. Now, slowing down when it comes to Khabib is a big word. He hasn't really faced anybody that really had the great cardio that Tony has. So in all of these fights, he was able to dictate the pace and set the pace. But in my opinion, when it comes to the 4th and 5th round, let's just say in the Ali Quinta fight, in the 4th and 5th round, Khabib wasn't really keen on going ahead and taking down Ali Quinta. Even in a Conor McGregor fight, in the 3rd round, he showed a bit of slowing down. The ferociousness and the all-around physical power of always coming forward of Khabib seemed to be diminishing. Now, at that point, really, that doesn't say much. Khabib always pulls through and always gets his takedowns, always gets his finishes, always ends up being the more dominant fighter. But in the 4th and 5th round, Tony Ferguson will still be there in my opinion. This fight, I don't believe this fight will go to a finish. I do believe that this fight will go end up in the judge's hands and it will be a decision. Unlike any other Khabib opponent, Tony Ferguson is a pace setter, and in this fight I will have to say that Tony Ferguson will be the guy that is going to be setting the pace. From the stand-up department, I do believe that in the opening round he will come forward and he will put the pressure on Khabib. Khabib has always shown that he's willing to take the first step backwards, that he is willing to keep his back close to the cage. He isn't really afraid to move around Khabib. So when Tony Ferguson can get Khabib close to the cage, I do believe that from there, the takedowns that Khabib really shoots in for will be a lot more telegraphed and a lot more easier for Tony Ferguson to counter. Khabib doesn't really shoot for the takedowns that, for example, Kevin Lee shoots in for. A lot of people, and including myself, have drawn the similarities between the two and said if Kevin Lee can go in there and take down Tony Ferguson, then why couldn't Khabib do it? And that is a fair argument. But the difference between those fights and fighters is the fact that Kevin Lee shoots in for a lot of powerful takedowns that do not really depend on the cage. A lot of Khabib Nurmagomedov takedowns come from grinding his opponents out from the cage and taking them down from there, whereas Kevin Lee, he can shoot in for a takedown in the middle of the cage, for example for a single leg or a double leg, whereas Khabib, he doesn't really do that. So the threat of Khabib's takedowns when you have Khabib up against the cage will be a lot more diminished, and I believe that Tony Ferguson will feel a lot safer in there. Now at the ranges where the fight is in the pocket, Tony Ferguson's elbows, they are very crucial for him. The elbows are, I believe, what would save him from getting clinched up and taken down. I am not saying that he can go in there and use his elbows to avoid every single takedown. However, the importance of the elbows comes down to the fact that he will have Khabib Nurmagomedov's respect. If you can make Khabib Nurmagomedov respect you and actually give a chance to let you breathe and not get smothered by him all the time, that is where you can beat him. For a moment, if you can stop Khabib's aggression of always coming forward, of always trying to get a dominant position over you, that is where you can have your own success. And when Tony Ferguson can get off his own success, he's a very dangerous fighter, as shown in the Anthony Pettis fight, as shown in the Kevin Lee fight. Where Khabib Nurmagomedov gets most of his success is obviously in the grappling department, when he can get the dominant position over you on the floor. However, he doesn't go after a kill immediately. He breaks you down piece by piece, round by round, slowly but surely. Unlike any other Khabib opponent, I don't believe that Tony Ferguson will get tired out like that very quickly. I think that it will take a lot more work from Khabib to tire out Tony from the bottom. And let's just say even if he gets Tony Ferguson to the ground, Tony Ferguson, I believe that he will work off of his back and try to look for openings for submissions. That is a threat that has been really absent in most of Khabib Nurmagomedov's opponents. That is something that in my opinion Khabib will have to be very wary about. He cannot just go in there and try to ground and pound him and leave himself exposed for a sweep or a submission opportunity. And I believe that this will affect Khabib Nurmagomedov's grappling department. I believe that this will slow down Khabib, not really taking away from his success obviously, but I do believe that it will slow him down and not really go for the wearing out or the ground and pound that he has went for in most of his opponents. You see, in this fight, I believe that Tony Ferguson will get taken down and he will get dominated. But the fact that he can go in there and survive time in and time out really comes down to his great toughness. And I believe that in the 4th and in the 5th round especially, we will get to see Khabib Nurmagomedov the most tired that he has ever looked. I believe by that point, Tony Ferguson will probably have set a pace that Khabib Nurmagomedov kept up with, but it probably would have added up by that point. And in the 4th and 5th round, that is where I believe that Tony Ferguson's chances of winning are going to come into play. Will his elbows cut open Khabib and drain him out even more so he can add up a lot more punches against the cage and break him down piece by piece and get a TKO victory over Khabib? Or will he drag him to the ground and snap in a submission? But in the end, I do believe that early on, Tony Ferguson will get dominated, will get taken down, will get pinned, but I feel like he will be able to survive. And in those later rounds, in the 4th and 5th round, those are his opportunities to defeat Khabib Nurmagomedov. But in the end, only time will tell. For now, this is how Tony Ferguson could defeat Khabib, the Eagle Nurmagomedov, Leave what you guys think of the video in the comment section down below. Who do you guys believe will come out victorious? Leave that all in the comment section down below. As always, I am Keenan from Keenan KTV, signing off. Later.